Welcome in this week. It is Game On here on KWN TV Channel 7. Wherever you may be joining us from, glad to have you with us wherever or whenever you may be joining us. Again, this show is going to get played a couple of times over the next couple of days, so glad to have you with us. And we got a whole lot going on, of course, brought to you, as we always are, every week by Chattanooga State. A lot of stuff here over the next couple of weeks. Next week, we'll talk some high school basketball. Chuck Keefe, head basketball coach at Marion County, will be with us for a little while next week. We will talk some Super Bowl stuff next week as well. I've got some other stuff going on. Dave Schote from a great website, The Falcoholic. It's a Bleacher Report site. Covers the Atlanta Falcons. He's going to be with us next week, so we'll kind of talk some NFL stuff with him. Got a couple of special things for the Super Bowl that I don't even know if we're going to be able to get to all of them next week, but over the next couple of weeks, we'll kind of sprinkle some of them in. I'll tell you what we've got happening today. Danny Parker, InsideTennessee.com. Danny's going to be with us coming up in a few minutes. Tennessee with a actually back into the top 20 in recruiting now. We'll talk with Danny about that. Again, that's coming up in a few minutes. Brad Rowland, our buddy from Peachtree Hoops, we'll talk about those Atlanta Hawks with him today. And then if we have time, one of the strangest conversations I think I've ever had. There is a new book. Hang on. There's a new book that's out that's called NFL Confidential. And True Confessions from the Gutter of Football. This book is written by a guy who goes by his pen name is Johnny Anonymous. And this guy is he's a 4-year NFL veteran. He's an offensive lineman. And on the cover of the book, he plainly states, I'm an NFL player and I blanking hate the NFL. We have the interview that I did with not Johnny Football, but Johnny Anonymous. Never done one of those things. You ever seen, like on CBS or like 60 Minutes, one of those shows, when somebody's trying to protect their identity and they do, it's like all you see is like the dark, shadowy outline of the person. You know what I'm talking about, Alex? And then they disguise the person's voice for the interview. That's what this interview was like. He actually is, for the press for the book that he's doing, he's using a vocal thing. One of those things that will basically change his voice because he doesn't want to be recognized. Years ago, and this would be, I don't know, mid-'80s, late 80s, I guess, I got a used secondhand copy of a book called Instant Replay. It's written by Jerry Kramer. Jerry Kramer, a fantastic guard with the Green Bay Packers in the 1960s, made the NFL's all-decade team of the 60s. He's in the Packer Hall of Fame. He's never made the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which is an absolute travesty because Jerry Kramer deserves to be. He's one of the greatest offensive linemen to ever play the game. He deserves to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Jerry Kramer wrote a book with Dick Schaap called Instant Replay. If you're a fan of that era of football, regardless of whether you're a Packer fan or not, it's a must-read. That was a book. I am a self-proclaimed bookworm, but I read about two things, sports and history. So those two, and if it's not one of those two, it really doesn't interest me much. So this book, Instant Replay, again, Dick Schaap, longtime sports writer, he was on ESPN forever up until he passed away. Dick Schaap was the editor of this book with Jerry. Jerry Kramer wrote it. Dick Schaap edited it. A lot of people feel like Jerry Kramer never got in the Pro Football Hall of Fame or hasn't gotten in the Pro Football Hall of Fame yet because of the book Instant Replay. I thought it was tremendous. I probably read the book 4 times. Thought it was fantastic. But it is a homogenized, heck, let me tell you, if they made that book into a movie, it might be PG-13. Maybe PG-13. This book here is, let me tell you, Instant Replay is a fairy tale compared to some of the stuff that Johnny Anonymous writes about in this book. If we have time today, we'll get to some of that interview with him. Again, it was one of the more strange things that I've ever done was to talk to this guy. But he was the book is very blunt. He's very honest about what happened and about what is happening in the NFL. He talks about concussions. He talks about domestic violence, guys getting in trouble. He talks about all that stuff, as well as racism and everything else. He's a guy that's been in the league now for a couple of years as an offensive lineman. As he talks about in the book, he was not a starter, but over the course of this season, this book was written during the 2014 season. It was kind of his diary, if you will, of the 2014 season. He was forced into a starting role because a couple of guys got hurt. Interesting read. I'm not going to tell you that it's, there's a couple of books that I think are, if you're a sports fan, they're must reads you got to have. When Pride, if you're a Packer fan, or again, if you're a fan of pro football in the 1960s or a fan of Vince Lombardi, there's a book called When Pride Still Mattered, written by, I think the guy's name's David Manassas. That's a tremendous read. This book, I'm not going to tell you that. I'll tell you that it's an easy read. And I'll tell you that if you're offended by four-letter words, it is not the book for you. But, again, if you're into that sort of thing and you want kind of that behind-the-scenes look in an NFL locker room and kind of what goes on and what it's really like, then it may be worth your time picking it up. So if we have time for that today, we'll get to it. If not, we'll look for that interview coming up next week. And I guess the great thing about it is it's not real time sensitive, so this is an interview that we can drop in at some point in time on this program over the next couple of weeks. Wanted to hit a couple of the headlines in case you've been away, if you've missed what's going on in sports here recently, and I'll hit a couple of things here before we go to our break and come back with Danny Parker. NFC, AFC championship games coming up this weekend. Winners, of course, advance to Super Bowl 50. Cardinals and Panthers, you can watch it on Fox TV. Broncos, Patriots, that game is on CBS. Basically, what we have is we got the four best teams. The four best teams in football have made it to this championship round. I don't care what happens on Saturday or on Sunday in these games. The story Sunday and the story after Sunday is going to be that of Peyton Manning. Is this Peyton Manning's final game playing in the National Football League? If Peyton Manning wins and the Broncos go to the Super Bowl and then they win a Super Bowl, Peyton has two titles then, I think, and he beats Tom Brady again. He's 2-1 against Brady in these championship games. If that happens, I think the storyline surrounding Peyton Manning's career changes tremendously. I think the idea of, well, you can't win the big one anymore, you got to throw that out. I mean, the guy's 40 years. I ain't going to throw it out anyway. The guy's 40 years old, for crying out loud. But the question is, if they win, what happens? If that's enough, if he wins and then he turns around and wins the Super Bowl, is that enough for Peyton Manning to say, yep, I'm done, I'm out of here? Or does he try to come back and play again? Something to be said for going out on top as I see it. If they lose and Peyton Manning plays well, does he come back again and try to make another run? It may not be with Denver. And I think now if you're the Broncos, you know a little bit about what you got in Brock Osweiler. You're probably feeling a little bit better about what all's around you. So maybe you don't necessarily need Peyton Manning. But there's other teams that I think that would jump at the opportunity to bring in Peyton Manning. The Houston Texans, prime example, good defense. They got a wide receiver there, a guy that you can get the ball to. So maybe that would work. I don't know. But the question will be if they lose and Peyton plays well, what happens? What happens if they lose and Peyton plays bad? Then is that enough to say, all right, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here? That's going to be the question, though, that's going to be answered over the next couple of weeks, and it will all center around Peyton Manning and how this thing turns out. The fixing of tennis matches. And again, tennis typically isn't something that we talk a huge deal about, but this report that's out, it's everywhere. You can Google it, you can look it up, you can find it. That this report says that top 50 players in tennis have been, there's 16 players in all that have all been at some point in time, top 50 players that have been approached about rigging tennis tournaments or may have been involved in the rigging of tennis matches. Let me tell you, if there's one sport that's easy to rig, it's tennis. Because a lot of this is one-on-one stuff. It's not like a team sport. Tennis is typically individuals competing against each other. You've also got guys in tennis who it's expensive to be a professional tennis player. Because not only are you paying for your travel, you're also paying for travel of your tennis coach who's going to travel with you when you go to play one of these matches. And the tennis isn't under as much scrutiny. I had no idea people even bet on tennis, but apparently you can bet on tennis. It's not very big in this country, but in other parts of the world, there's huge amounts of money that gets wagered on these tennis matches. Tennis is also a sport where, and they talk about this being top 50 guys. Tennis is the only sport where you can be a top 50 guy and still not be making great money. You think about any other sport. If you're the 50th best player in the National Football League, you're making a ton of money. If you're the 50th best player in baseball, you're making a ton of money. You're making $10 million a year. If you're the 50th best player in the NBA, you're making good money. You're making big money. Same thing goes for the 50th best player in hockey. But if you're the 50th best golfer, you're doing pretty well still. But if you're the 50th best tennis player, there's not a whole lot. That's not a lot of coin. That's not a lot of coin. Interesting to see what all comes out of this. Big, nasty stuff. This is almost some of that Olympic stuff where some of the bribery that's going on in the Olympics and from the IOC over the last couple of years has come to light. This situation involving these tennis matches is very similar. Interesting stuff. We'll see what the outcome is of it. And in case you haven't heard yet, 101 college football underclassmen have declared for this NFL draft. This is a rabid program, a problem, I should say, in college football that's got to be curved. Last year, there were like 46 underclassmen that went undrafted. How many of these 101 are going to be drafted, and how many of them are going to be drafted in the first 3 rounds? Because as you get into that third day of the draft, you fall into rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the draft. Look, your chances of making a roster become really, really tough. Really, really tough. So, again, it's a situation that I'm not sure that I've got all the answers for it, but it's a situation that is going to have to be answered by the National Football League. I don't know that the NCAA can do or change a whole lot. The NFL controls who comes into the league or when they allow you to come into the league. And I understand these guys, they want to get a paycheck. And in the NFL, your pay raise or your pay scale is based upon where you were drafted. Everything's slotted. So, if you're not going in the first round, if you make the roster, I think as a rookie, you're going to make, it's almost $500,000 a year. You're going to make $450,000 a year. It's big money for these guys, especially a lot of these guys who in many instances are coming from nothing. And all of a sudden now you've got a chance to make, $500,000 a year. But everybody in the NFL is playing for that second contract. Everybody wants contract number 2. And that's the reason why these guys go ahead and jump now, because the earlier I jump, the younger I'll be when I get that second contract, the more productive years I've got left in the NFL to be able to play. And as we've talked about before here, there's only so many hits your body's got in you before you finally have to say no more. But 101 underclassmen declare for the NFL draft. Tennessee had a couple of guys that Jalen Reeves-Maben and Cam Sutton who said no to the NFL. They're coming back to school. They'll play for new defensive coordinator Bob Shoop. And we'll talk about that with Danny Parker from InsideTennessee.com. We'll do it as we continue on today. Glad to have you with us here. This is Game On, brought to you by Chattanooga State on KWN-TV. Hang on. We'll be right back.
Life is like a friendly game filled with choices. So, will you choose to soar above, or will you crash and burn? Sometimes we make bad choices, but one very smart choice is getting a degree from Chattanooga State, like engineering technology or one from our award-winning nursing program. Make the smart choice, Chat State.
Randy's has reopened as Randy's Country Kitchen. Back at Randy's Country Kitchen is our famous seafood buffet from 4 till close on Friday. And Randy's Country Kitchen features an all-you-can-eat pizza and salad buffet every Monday and Thursday 4 till close. You get pizza, salad, and a drink for only $8.95. Randy's Country Kitchen, now open Monday through Saturday, closed on Sunday, and delivery is available at 657-5330. Pizza, strombolis, and roasted chicken are back too at Randy's Country Kitchen, Highway 136 West at the foot of Sand Mountain in Trenton. Little Caesars is your game day party headquarters.
Pizza, pizza.
Right now at Little Caesars in Trenton and in Kimball, check out the super deals for your game day on party-size pizzas, the classic round pizzas, and the deep, deep dish pizza. Get 3 large classic rounds for just $15, or 3 large deep, deep dish pizzas for just $24. And the deals just get better from there. Little Caesars, 4651 Highway 136 West in Trenton, and 411 Kimball Crossing in Kimball. Morningstar Dry Cleaners, your local dry cleaners, located at 57 Crabtree Street, right behind Door Crisp Realty in Trenton. Morningstar Dry Cleaners offers a drop-off location for after hours and pickup service for businesses. We wash, dry, fold, iron, press, dry clean, and yes, we do alterations too. Now under new ownership, Morningstar Dry Cleaners. Open until 6 p.m. Monday through Friday for your convenience. Call them today, 657-3685. Morningstar Dry Cleaners on Crabtree Street, right behind Door Crisp Realty in Trenton.
Georgia Northwestern Technical College wants to help put you to work. Our programs in business, health, industrial, and public service will train you for the jobs available today. GNTC offers schedules in day, evening, and online classes at 5 campus locations with financial aid options too. You are sure to find a career path that works for you with our variety of degrees, diplomas, and certificates available. Visit us in person or on the web at gntc.edu. Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Your career begins here.
A small bank with big service. Citizens Bank and Trust, offering a wide range of services, including online banking. Pay your bills, manage your account anytime, 24 hours a day. Your account balance is only a phone call away as well at 657-1234. Or visit our convenient locations. Lookout Mountain, Georgia, Higdon, Alabama, on our main branch on Highway 11 in Trenton. Citizens Bank and Trust, 657-5678. A community bank that believes in the community. Citizens Bank and Trust. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Welcome back here on Game On, here on this Thursday evening, KWN TV, as we get you ready. Big weekend in the National Football League. More on that coming up before we finish up. We'll talk some hoops as well tonight. But right now, let's welcome in Danny Parker. Danny is the he is with InsideTennessee.com. He is a regular on this program and giving us a few minutes this evening. Danny, I'm a little late to the party on asking this, and I know you've addressed it both in print and I'm sure on other shows that you have been on. Cam Sutton, Jalen Reeves-Maben, both back in the fold next year for Tennessee. How big of a move is this for Tennessee for those two guys to come back for next year?
For sure, Chris, and you throw Alvin Kamara in there as well, another guy that's been off to get his draft grade. For all them to be coming back, I think it's it's big time for Tennessee, because no matter how well you do in recruiting, no matter how many 4 stars, 5 stars you sign, you can't duplicate that kind of experience in guys that have been down to Tuscaloosa, to Gainesville, to Athens, to the Columbias, and have been in the trenches and have been behind in the fourth quarter and know how to react when the bullets are flying. And you get in Cam Sutton and Reese Maben, you get guys that have a double-digit number of starts each of the last 2 years, with Cam Sutton going into his fourth year as a starter, and also the nation's leading punt returner, averaged around 18 yards per punt return. That's also almost impossible to find on the recruiting trail. And Jalen Reese Maben, back-to-back 100 tackle seasons. Should have been on more all-SEC lists, in my opinion, but he'll get some accolades going into his senior year. He's great in coverage in that 4-2-5 alignment that Tennessee uses it a lot when they go against spread offenses. But, all three guys coming back for Tennessee in 2016 is big because, as you know, Chris, the expectations are going to, go through the roof with Tennessee returning roughly 17 starters off a 9-win team.
Yeah, look, Danny, they're going to be the favorite for everybody, probably, at least the favorite in the East going into next year. Is this team ready now? I think you and I were both in agreement back in August when we talked about Tennessee, and you and I were together even in July at the SEC Media Days, and we talked about it then. The fact that, if you could get to 9 wins this year, that was great. 7, 8 wins, probably a little more realistic for this football team. But it would be this year, the 2016 season, was the year you and I both pointed to. Is Tennessee ready now to take that next step?
They should be. I mean, they better be. I mean, you talk about a team that not only returns, roughly 17 starters, but a 4-year starter at quarterback when so many programs are having to shift gears at quarterback. Alabama, most likely Florida, quite possibly Georgia going to Jacob Eason. Missouri had its issues at quarterback last year with Drew Lock. So, you have a huge advantage over what, in my opinion, is the most important position in all of team sports at quarterback, with a guy that's extremely experienced in Josh Dobbs, who has technically 4 years worth of starters experience if you factor in what's going to happen next year. So, you add in all the guys like Derek Barnett and Jalen Hurd, and so many guys that have been starting since they were true freshmen, and they've been in the trenches, and they seem like they've been on campus here in Knoxville for 7, 8, 9 years. But you're talking about guys that have been, again, just like Reese Maben and Sutton, have been in the trenches, they've been in there with the bullets flying. They've seen Tennessee, go kind of come from the ashes. It seems like almost every year for a while they were 5-7, 5-7, 5-7. Started to turn the corner last year at 7-6, and then 9-4 this year with a blowout of the number 13th ranked Northwestern team. So I think it's the next step. Obviously the games are played for a reason, but when you have Alabama and Florida coming to Knoxville, them having to replace so many people and some key cogs going on to the NFL with those programs, and Tennessee returning almost all their key cogs, the guys that could have gone pro. It's just one advantage after another that should be in Tennessee's favor this year.
Quarterback play in the SEC, Danny, it was terrible this last year. It was awful. Dak Prescott's gone. I know Chad Kelly's coming back at Ole Miss. Josh Dobbs will be back at Tennessee. We saw Jake Coker kind of come into his own late at Alabama, but early in the year, he wasn't really a huge factor. You kind of ran through all those teams in the East. The East was awful at quarterback. I mean, Georgia was terrible at quarterback. Florida, after Greer went down, they were awful. Matty Mock at Missouri, he's regressed, not progressed as a quarterback in the college game. Auburn, Jeremy Johnson couldn't get out of his own way. They were bad at quarterback. Will the SEC be better at the quarterback position in 2016 than they were in 2015?
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, they were terrible. There's no way around it. And I think that's why a lot of these programs lost some of the games that they should have won. I know that Trevor Knight is transferring from Oklahoma to Texas A&M, and that's going to help one of Tennessee's opponents this year. But, you go up and down the list, I mean, there's so many teams that are going to have rookie quarterbacks out there, from potentially Felipe Franks at Florida, Jacob Eason at Georgia. Who knows at Alabama, possibly Blake Barnett, I would have to guess. So a lot of guys are going to be extremely green. And, you mentioned Dak Prescott was far and away the best quarterback in the league last year. He's supposed to go, and I'm guessing third, fourth, fifth round in the NFL draft here in late April. Returning, I mean, Josh Dobbs and Chad Kelly, in my opinion, are going to be first and second team preseason All-SEC. pretty much by default, unless somebody votes for a guy like they did Jeremy Johnson last year that they had really not seen a whole lot of. So if they go with experienced guys and guys that put up some solid numbers last year, it'll be Kelly and Dobbs, and probably a gap between those two and everybody else until about midway through the season when some of those young guys do get experience.
Danny, we talked about Tennessee being the favorite in the East. Now, for Butch Jones and his job security, is there a game on this Tennessee schedule that, when it comes to Butch Jones and his job security, is there a game you circle, you highlight, you put the red X by that he really needs going into this 2016 campaign?
Yes, no doubt. And, with all due respect to what's probably going to be the largest football game in the history of the United States of America, with the battle at Bristol and Tennessee taking on Virginia Tech, and Alabama coming to town, and Tennessee going down to Georgia to take on Kirby Smart, the game that has to be circled is the Florida game in Knoxville about mid-September. You got that 11-game losing streak going up against the Gators. They're shifting gears down there. They've got a lot of key guys going on to the NFL, Vernon Hargraves, McAllister, different people. You got Jonathan Bullard graduating, Morrison graduating. So, just really extremely important guys that Florida depended on last year are going to be gone. DeMarcus Robinson, Kelvin Taylor, like we said, Will Greer's transferring. He's not going to be down there. So, that's a game Tennessee has to win. There's really no way around it. Both the last 2 years, Tennessee should have won that game, lost both of them by a point. A lot of people jumped off the bandwagon immediately. A lot of people calling for Butch Jones' head, and it'll be that way again this year. I mean, the only way you overcome a loss to a Florida in Knoxville in 2016 is if you pretty much sweep up everybody else and have a one-loss season and find a way to get to Atlanta for the SEC championship, which would include a win over Alabama during the season. I think that's the only way you get some people back on the bandwagon. I'm not saying Butch Jones would deserve to be fired if they lose to Florida. I'm not saying that at all, but that's definitely a big one where Butch Jones can get a lot of people that have kind of been dormant, kind of hanging out in the attic a little bit, waiting on Tennessee football to turn back around. That's the game he needs to have.
Tennessee had a top 20 defense in 2015. I think they were 16th in scoring. They were great on third downs. Yet Tennessee decides to make a hire at the defensive coordinator position. John Jancic is out. Bob Shoop comes in. Former Vandy defensive coordinator, had been at Penn State with James Franklin. Your thoughts on what this hire does for Tennessee football?
Well, looking at the stat, and Butch Jones mentioned it at the press conference where he introduced Bob Shoop to us, for 5 straight years, Bob Shoop defenses have ranked in the top 25 nationally. You're talking about a Vanderbilt program that does not recruit on an elite level like some other programs like a Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, and at a Penn State program that was undergoing NCAA sanctions and kind of had to make do with what they had with a much smaller roster compared to everybody else's 85-man scholarship limit. So you get him to Knoxville, and you get Derek Barnett, Khalil McKenzie, Joan Rees-Maybin, Cameron Sutton, all these talented guys, and you give him more pieces to play with. I think the expectations for Tennessee's defense are more about them turning the corner again next year. And I think another little bit of piece of it is his specialty is a little bit more in the defensive backfield. Tennessee loses Ladero McNeil and Brian Randolph's graduation, both starting safeties. Todd Kelly Jr., Stephen Griffin, Evan Berry, potentially Nigel Warrior, if they're able to sign him. They're going to have to get those guys up and ready at safety because those guys have to play very well this year. And I think that's a little bit of Bob Shoop's specialty, and if he can combine with Willie Martinez and help those type of athletes who are all former 4-star prospects. Nigel Warrior would be a 5-star if Tennessee is able to get him. If they can get them on the field and flying around playing center field, I think the defense is going to be very, very tough to score on.
2 more things here, Danny, before we finish up. Go over recruiting for me one time here. I know Tennessee is back in the top 20 now in the recruiting rankings. They picked up a couple of commitments here over the last week. Kind of break it down with National Signing Day getting closer. Where are they right now?
Yeah, the last couple of guys they got, Marcus Tatum, a 6'6" developmental offensive tackle, our scout network's number one ranked offensive tackle out of the state of Florida. Probably needs to put on, I would be safe to say probably at least 50 to 60 pounds before he's SEC ready, but extremely long guy, very athletic young man. Another guy they added, another 4-star prospect today, about 6-7 hours ago, Marquez Callaway at Warner Robins High School down in Warner Robins, Georgia, our number 14th ranked athlete in the country. He's going to play wide receiver at Tennessee, 6'2", about 180 pounds, high points to football extremely well. You turn on the turn on the film on him, looks a little bit like Cordero Patterson, not quite the explosion of Cordero, but similar in different ways and different athletic skills that he has. But Tennessee at 17 commits now. Sounds like they're probably going to sign 20. We'll see if anybody kind of looks around and backs off their commitment to Tennessee and opens up another spot. But there's some big names out there. Jonathan Kongbo, 5-star defensive end. Jordan Woods, 3-star defensive lineman. I mentioned Nigel Warrior, different guys coming into campus. Derek Brown, a 5-star defensive tackle, is coming in on the 29th. So there's some big-time guys who's going to be visiting Tennessee the last 2 weekends. And Butch Jones strategically has saved some of his in-home visits for some of these next couple of weeks. So he's going to be on the road a lot. But if Tennessee can finish very well down the stretch here, they've got a great chance to be in the top 15 in the Scout National Rankings when it's all said and done on February 3rd.
Danny, has the recruiting focus at Tennessee changed? Because I know and you and I talked about this at the time, when Butch Jones got the job, he inherited what was quite possibly certainly the slowest team in the SEC. I mean, I think Vandy had more team speed than what Tennessee did when Butch Jones got to town. And it was about trying to bring in those game changers, as many of them as he could. Now that there's some things have been settled and he's trying to build some depth, has the approach to recruiting changed a little bit at Tennessee now, where maybe he's looking more about guys that can be projects, that you can afford to bring in somebody that can spend a year or 2 years on the bench, or maybe redshirt a year and be ready to go by the time they're a redshirt sophomore?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Chris. And I think with both linebackers Tennessee's getting, neither will be called upon to play as a true freshman unless they're in on special teams. Jay Blakely, Daniel Batuli, a couple of extremely good athletes that really aren't extremely good at football right now. Not SEC football good at football right now. And, I talk about you see a couple of those kids get off the bus, you're like, holy cow, he's a freshman. But there's a lot of raw skill there. Those guys need to develop. I mentioned Marcus Tatum, an offensive tackle. Nathan Niehaus, Ryan Johnson, a couple more offensive tackles. Tennessee's bringing in Devontae Brooks, Austin Pope, a couple of tight ends. All 6, 7, 8 of those young men all need to redshirt and develop. But the way the Tennessee staff sees them is they see them with high upside guys that have traits that you cannot teach, but you put them in the weight room, you engineer them into SEC-level athletes, body and conditioning-wise, and let them kind of learn a little bit and develop the scheme. And I think you're going to see the excitement turn the corner with some of those guys in 2017, 2018. You'll get a little bit of taste of that this fall in 2016 with some guys moved on to defensive end, with a guy like Darrell Taylor, who came in as a 4-star defensive end, needed to put on a lot of weight, has done that, has learned a little bit under Kurt Magid this past year. He's going to come in as a redshirt freshman. I think he's going to be a terror coming off the edge in third down situation.
All right, Danny, as we finish up here, appreciate the football talk. You're going to cover the Lady Vols tonight, and folks, you can follow Danny Parker. You can find him on Twitter at @TheDannyParker. You can also find his handiwork at InsideTennessee.com. It's part of the Scout.com network. They do a tremendous job covering Tennessee athletics there. Danny, you're going to cover the Lady Vols. I can't tell you how many people over the last, 2 weeks or more have come up and in conversation to me said, man, what in the heck has happened to the Lady Vols? So I ask you, what in the heck's happened to the Lady Vols?
It's extremely high expectations, and really given the talent that they had coming into the season, the girls coming off red shirts, some of the guards they had coming in like a Tia Cooper, Diamond DeShields coming in, getting healthy, coming off her red shirt, Mercedes Russell, a 6'5" center who once was the number one player in the country. I mean, expectations are high. They're always high at Tennessee with Lady Vols. Pat Summitt cranked things up, and obviously the parity's quite a bit broader now. I guess if that's the right word with women's basketball. All these teams that are solid now. South Carolina, Auburn, Baylor, that they can stick up on you and beat you. 5-6 years ago, Tennessee would beat these teams by a drum, but they've turned the corner. It's a tougher schedule out there, and I don't mean to make an excuse for Holly Warlick. I'm definitely sound like I am, but I definitely don't think that Tennessee is anywhere near what they should be right now, record-wise, ranking-wise. I guess they're about to fall out of the top 25 if they haven't already. I don't follow them as close as so many. Trying to figure out where so many teenagers are going to play their college football right now. But I think Dave Hart's going to have some questions to answer at the end of the season with Holly. I don't think he would make a move. Holly would be probably pressured to make at least one, if not two, changes on her coaching staff after the season's over. But something has to change. We'll have to see how they do in the postseason. If they can mesh and bind what the coaching staff's doing a little bit more, and the chemistry between the staff and the players, can turn the corner a little bit. They can do some damage in the postseason. I think all will be forgiven. But right now, people are extremely upset, and it's not just down in your neck of the woods. It's definitely inside Tennessee on our message boards and up here in the Knoxville area.
Danny Parker, Inside Tennessee. Check him out on Twitter at @TheDannyParker. You can also find him online, InsideTennessee.com. Danny, great stuff as always, man. Good to catch up, and we'll do this again. We got National Signing Day coming up, so we'll be talking again soon, man.
Sounds great, Chris. Thanks for having us, buddy.
Thanks. Danny Parker, Inside Tennessee. Danny does a good job, good friend, very good friend of this program. So I would encourage you to give him lend him your eyes as you peruse InsideTennessee.com. Danny's a good friend and a great guy. Brad Rowland from Peachtree Hoops. He's joining us next. We'll talk a little Hawks basketball. They won last night. It's been kind of a strange season. It's like this team hadn't found any kind of consistency yet. We'll get into that with Brad Rowland. We'll do it next. Hang on. Back in a minute. Game On, brought to you by Chattanooga State.
It's coming soon. Boss Business Center at 29490 Alabama Highway 71 in Bryant. We'll have school and office supplies, shipping supplies, notary services, copy and fax services, community postal services available too. You can also renew any of your Jackson County auto tax and pay your property taxes at the new Boss Business Center that'll be opening soon at North Sand Mountain. Call 597-3829 for more information. The Boss Business Center just north of North Sand Mountain School. KWN Live and Local TV, the home of the Jackson County Tournament. Join us for tournament action right here on your Live and Local TV station, KWN, as the Jackson County boys and girls battle it out both JV and varsity. You'll watch all the games right here. It's the Jackson County Basketball Tournament right here on KWN TV.
Check your local guide for times and days of the Jackson County Tournament broadcast on KWN TV. Kevin Dukes is a Jackson County native who understands the community and recognizes the needs of our students. Kevin is an educator with 19 years of experience. He has a vision for the future of Jackson County schools. Kevin has a plan to promote student achievement, keep our students safe, prepare students for academic and professional careers, and ensure fiscal stability. Kevin believes that our students are the future of the community and every child deserves a first-class education. Transparent, conservative, vested. Vote Kevin Dukes for Jackson County School Superintendent. Paid for by the candidate.
At Gross Furniture in Trenton, Georgia, you get the savings, the selection, and the satisfaction of getting the furniture you deserve at the prices you want. Come in, relax, and take your time. Our staff can assist you with the entire process, from expert advice to professional delivery. That's because Gross Furniture is local and treats you with honesty. Just north of the Courthouse Square on Highway 11 in Trenton. Gross Furniture, the home furnishing store that offers you more.
Hungry? How about lunch at Cloud's Pizza, Highway 71 in Higdon? Weekdays, Cloud's Pizza serves their delicious hot vegetable bar. How about the best burgers and fries around? And yes, pizza. Make sure to get an order of their famous cheese sticks, homemade with fresh dough and Wisconsin cheese. And don't miss Fish Fry Friday, catfish, hush puppies, and more, all for just $8.99 Friday, 4 p.m. to close. Cloud's Pizza, Alabama Highway 71 in Higdon, 597-3100. Open till 8, Monday through Saturday at Cloud's Pizza.
Hi, I'm Randy, the safe guy from Randy's Pawn Shop. You know your gun collection is worth a lot of money. Protect your firearms from fire and theft with a Liberty Safe. We have only the best at Randy's Pawn Shop, and Liberty Safes are top of the line. They use state-of-the-art manufacturing process, giving you a high-quality safe at affordable prices. Liberty offers interior lights and accessory door panels. No wonder Liberty is America's #1 safe manufacturer. Come see me, Randy the safe guy at Randy's Pawn Shop. I'll protect your guns and peace of mind.
All right, back on Game On here on KWN TV, brought to you by Chattanooga State. Appreciate those folks for helping us out and helping put this show on every week as well. We welcome you in wherever you may be joining us, or for that matter, whenever you may be joining us as well. I want to head out on our hotline and welcome in Brad Rowland. Brad is with PeachtreeHoops.com. It's a fantastic website that focuses on a lot of basketball in the state of Georgia, but a huge part of that is the play of the Atlanta Hawks, and that's kind of what we want to talk to Brad about. Brad, when I start looking statistically at the Hawks numbers from where they were last year to where they are this year, I see a lot of similarities there, statistically speaking. Yet when I watch this basketball team, they look completely different than they did this time a year ago, a team that went on to win 60 games. What's missing with this group of Hawks?
Yeah, as you mentioned, they are remarkably similar in a few ways. The way that they play offensively, they look the same. That's the system that Mike Budenholzer runs. And on the other end, on the defensive end, it's also very similar in the way that it operates. I think a couple things that can be attributed for why they're not playing quite as well. Point guard position for me is the main one. Jeff Teague's taken a pretty sizable step back from last season, and given that he's been tasked with a lot of responsibility offensively and kind of getting the team going, getting into the paint, collapsing the paint, that has been a problem for the offense. And also on that side of the floor, Kyle Korver is not shooting the ball quite as well as he was last year. A slump for Kyle Korver is not really a slump for anybody else. He's still shooting 36% from three for the season, but compared to what it was this time last season, when it was about 50%, that's a sizable dip. So that can account for some of the offensive issues. And on the defensive end, it's really been rebounding. It's never been a team that's very good at rebounding the ball defensively, and they're kind of undersized, but it's definitely been a bigger issue this year than it has been in the past. So those are just a couple quick things that are a little bit different, even though it looks the same.
You can't expect Korver to shoot it as well as he did last year, can you? I mean, that was I don't care whether you're talking about Steph Curry or anybody. What Korver did last year was, man, that was pretty amazing at the run he had. I know he kind of tailed off there in the playoffs, but through the regular season, he was unbelievable last year. Is it too much to expect that again out of him?
Yeah, I mean, he was never going to repeat that level. He led the league in three-point percentage last year pretty comfortably at 49%. As you mentioned, that kind of included a bit of a tail off at the end. He was over 50% for much of the year. At the same time, I don't expect him to still shoot 36%, which is where he is now. I think, all things considered, he's probably somewhere in the low to mid-40s, which is obviously exceptional. But keeping up the same level as last year was always going to be unrealistic. I think it's just kind of regressed a little bit harder than most people expected. And I think more than Kyle expected, he's been a guy who's clearly frustrated by the way he shot the ball to this point. And again, it's kind of funny that the guy could be in a slump when he's still shooting better than league average from three-point land. But that's when Kyle thinks of himself, and I'm pretty sure he thinks of himself as one of the best shooters in the world. And it's not acceptable for him, and I'm sure they expect that of him too.
You talk about Jeff Teague's play at point guard and how maybe there's kind of some regression there in his game. What's up with Dennis Schroeder, and why haven't we seen more of him? There's been a couple of games where he has not played at all.
Yeah, there was a stretch there. I think it was 2 games when Mike Budenholzer, for whatever reason, elected to go with Shelvin Mack as backup point guard, kind of without reason. At least without a stated reason. Budenholzer was kind of famous for not really giving the media and the fans a lot of insight into what their decision-making process is. He'll answer a question, but he'll answer it vaguely. And with Dennis, recently he's played much better on the last handful of games, the last couple of weeks. But prior to that, he was, as you mentioned, kind of struggling and kind of almost disappearing at times. For me, he presents serious upside. Teague is struggling, and there have been times when Budenholzer has gone to Schroeder down the stretch, even in the fourth quarter, and played him as sort of the hot hand option. But I think there are still times when Budenholzer doesn't really trust Dennis in full to execute the offense. He's more of a free spirit, a guy who's going to kind of do what he does, and a lot of the time that doesn't necessarily facilitate the rest of the roster. So I think Fitz is still young. He's 22 years old, and there's kind of that little battle between the coaching staff and Schroeder that at times that can end up with him on the bench, and at times it can end up with him playing really well and even closing games. So it's sort of that inconsistency that comes with being young, but he's a very talented player.
Is he still considered the future? I mean, do you feel like that whether it comes next year or in 2 years from now, that at some point in time is within the organization, is he viewed as the heir apparent at point guard?
Yeah, I think so. Kind of interesting looking ahead a bit. Teague and Schroeder both have their contracts end at the same time, which is after the 2016-2017 season. The difference there, of course, is that the Hawks have control over Schroeder. He would become a restricted free agent, so they could match any offer. But essentially, that means that at some point they're going to have to decide between the two. They can't afford to pay both of them. I mean, I guess they could afford to pay them, but in the grand scheme of the NBA world, it would be unwise for them to pay 8-figure salaries to both point guards. And I think given where Teague's age is going to be at that point, he'll be basically 30 years old. 30 years old is very old for a point guard, a starting point guard in the NBA. And Schroeder will just be hitting that age of 23, 24, which should be kind of entering his prime. So it kind of lines up well for the Hawks to trust Schroeder with the future. I think as long as he keeps showing the upside that they know he has, they're going to start giving him more and more responsibility. And, as you mentioned, eventually handing him over the reins, provided he lives up to that mantle.
The Hawks made some moves this offseason, and the one that I know was hotly debated and talked about in Atlanta was DeMarre Carroll. And what do you do with DeMarre Carroll? Do you try to re-sign him? Such a great defensive player. Do you let him walk? The Hawks elected to let him walk. Does this basketball team miss his presence, whether it's on the court or off the court?
Yeah, a little bit. I think that's become somewhat overblown. Carroll was very good. I'm a big fan of what he brought to the table on both ends of the court. But at the same time, if you look at the numbers, Kent Bazemore, for instance, who's kind of been billed as Carroll's replacement, he's been very good this year on both ends of the court. DeMarre brought sort of a bit of a swagger to the table that people might think that the Hawks are missing, and I can't argue with that. He's a very confident guy, sort of a gritty guy that likes to do the little things. And by the time he left Atlanta, he's really scoring and shooting the ball well, on top of his defensive value to the team. So there's a bit of a drop-off. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that Kent Bazemore is the same or as good of a player as Carroll was by the end of his tenure. But at the same time, a lot of people want to quickly point to that as the reason that the Hawks have regressed, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think Bazemore's playing really well. If you look at Carroll, he's kind of been banged up in Toronto, making it to the point where the Hawks might be very happy that they elected to sort of let him walk. I think they were prepared to pay him a decent amount, and I think they offered him probably a good contract, but Toronto came in with what they considered to be an above-market contract, and they didn't want to match it. And I'm sure no one in the organization wanted him to go, but at the same time, you have to be in a league with a salary cap. You have to be fiscally responsible. I think DeMarre kind of played so well that he priced himself out of Atlanta, and it's sort of working out for the Hawks in that they found Bazemore, who's playing quite well, but there's probably a little bit of there's probably a few things that DeMarre is missed for, but at the same time, it's probably a little bit overrated at this point.
Do you see the Hawks making a trade? Will they be in the move to make a move before the NBA trade deadline?
It's possible. The team is 26-17 right now, sort of in the mix for the number 2 through 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. They're kind of in an interesting spot right now. This is not a team that normally likes to do the trade deadline move. Sort of their bigger moves in recent years have come in the summer, in the offseason. So it would be slightly out of character for the Hawks to do that. But at the same time, if they want to go all in, so to speak, they could do that. There's some pieces they could move, some draft picks they could move in the future. Or if they wanted to, reassess and say that maybe this isn't their year and maybe build a little bit for the future, they could probably do that as well. It wouldn't shock me if they made a move, but if you asked me to predict whether they will, I would probably say no, just because it kind of goes away from what they've done traditionally.
What do they need? I mean, if they were to make a move, what's the attributes, what's the skill set they're looking for?
Yeah, that's sort of the rub, is that this team, there's not really a quote-unquote hole, so to speak. It's more of a team that has good players at each position and not necessarily elite players at a few of those spots. I think in the front court they're pretty much set with Millsap and Horford and Splitter as their backup. Most people would point to the wing, the shooting guard, small forward spots as the area where the Hawks could theoretically upgrade. But at the same time, it's kind of tough to get anybody that's better than the guys they have now. There's always guys you can trade for, but unless you are going to get that sharp upgrade, ideally they probably will be looking for someone who can help them offensively a bit. Teague and Schroeder are kind of their only creators offensively in the backcourt. So ideally, I guess you could look for a wing player that can kind of get their own shot and penetrate, break down the defense. But if you're to get that guy, you're going to have to overpay or take a guy who's maybe a defensive issue. So it's kind of tough to project what they actually would do because of the fact that they have so many core players that they probably don't want to move. You don't want to move Millsap or Horford or Korver. So it's one of those things where it either go really, really kind of off the board with a big move that nobody sees coming, or it'll be a very small, on the periphery move where they go add another bench piece or maybe go add another shooter or something like that. So the obvious move is not there, and that's sort of frustrating, I know, for fans that want the fireworks. But this team's not really going to tell you ahead of time either. They're kind of famous for working in the background. So it's going to be one of those things where if it happens, it's going to come out of nowhere.
Do you see guys as being untradeable? I mean, is Millsap and Horford, Kyle Korver, you talk about them being the core players. Do you view those guys as being unmovable for the Hawks?
Normally I would say that Millsap and Horford are the two guys who were quote-unquote untradeable. I mean, in the NBA, everybody has a price, but within reason, I can't see them moving Millsap in the first year of that big contract they gave out. He's been so good this year. He's almost certainly going to be in the All-Star game. He's been fantastic. Horford's kind of been the guy they've built around the last few seasons, so that kind of makes him in the untouchable category. The only thing with Al is that his contract expires at the end of the season. So there's that faint possibility that if something went wrong and they wanted to build for the future, they could try to move Horford. Maybe if they thought that he wasn't going to come back as a free agent. But aside from that, I'd be surprised if they move either one of those guys. And Korver's one of those guys who's very valuable in this system. He's underpaid. I think he's making about $6 million this year, which is definitely below his market value. So they'd have to get blown away by an offer for that kind of guy. And same with Schroeder. I think Schroeder is, as we talked about earlier, he's sort of their core guy for the future at point guard. He's so cheap. I think he's making about $2 million this season. It would be very difficult to find adequate value and a reason to move that kind of guy. You'd have to get sort of bowled over by an offer. So somebody's untradeable. It would be surprising if any of those core guys are moved.
Yeah, the one thing that the Hawks missed there, they went through this phase, Brad, where it was like, who the heck are these guys? There was a period in Hawks basketball to where they had a bunch of guys that really didn't connect with me. I don't know that they really connected with a large part of that fan base. Now you've got guys, Horford, they kind of made him the face of that franchise, if you will. Paul Millsap has become a part of that as well. That's the reason why I find it hard to believe that they would look to try to deal either one of those two guys because, again, Horford's sold a lot of jerseys since he's been in Atlanta.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I said Millsap's safer because he's under the long-term contract that they just gave him in the offseason. And the only reason why Horford's even a point of discussion is because he's about to be a free agent. But as you mentioned, he's been their core guy, even going back to when they had Joe Johnson and Josh Smith. There was a number 3 pick in the draft, homegrown guy that they've had since he was drafted in the league. But Horford, it'd be shocking to me if they moved him. There's the school of thought, and I know there's some fans that think they should try to possibly move him ahead of free agency in case he decides to walk away for nothing. that's the disaster scenarios that Al decides to go somewhere else, and the Hawks get nothing in return for him. So if they think that's definitely going to happen, if there's some indication from Horford's camp that I have not seen or heard that he doesn't want to come back, then sure, go. Then they might want to shop him around. But unless that's the case, I just can't see it.
All right, Brad Rowland, PeachtreeHoops.com's fantastic website, a great resource, great read if you're a fan of the Atlanta Hawks. And Brad, appreciate the time, man. As always, we'll catch up with you again soon. Maybe the next time we're talking, the Hawks will be jockeying for a spot in the NBA's postseason.
That'd be fun to watch. Happy to do it anytime.
All right, man. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, it's Brad Rowland from PeachtreeHoops.com. Again, fantastic website there, so check those guys out. We'll come back. Little Atlanta Braves tidbit to wrap up the show. We'll do that next. Glad to have you hanging out with us here. Game On, brought to you by Chattanooga State. Back in a minute.
And Keaton invites everyone to the new Artsy Cafe across from Citizens Bank and Trust in Trenton. The Artsy Cafe features homemade sandwiches, soups, and salads. Start with a great breakfast menu at 6:30 a.m. Our menu includes fresh roasted coffee, served hot with a full line of espresso drinks, cappuccinos, lattes, and more. Satisfy your sweet tooth with a visit to our dessert bar, featuring over 25 different pastries, cakes, and pies. Call ahead at 657-FOOD. Open Monday through Saturday until 9. Make a stop in the gift shop on your way out at the Artsy Cafe. Meet your friends today at the Artsy Cafe.
A time-tested financial institution equipped with the latest banking technology. The Bank of Dade, with mobile banking to fit your on-the-go lifestyle. Download our latest app today for your iPhone, Android, or tablet to bank on the go. Check your balance, pay bills, make deposits, and keep track of your account anytime and anywhere with the Bank of Dade's smartphone app. Make life easier by using today's most advanced banking technology to your advantage. Call us at 657-6842 or visit on the web at bankofdade.com. Your hometown bank since 1956, the Bank of Dade. Main offices on Highway 11 North in Trenton, and drive-thrus on Highway 11 North and Highway 136 West. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Everything for the hunter and the outdoorsman is right here at Scenic Outdoors, 2548 Scenic Highway, Lookout Mountain. Your hunting, fishing, and camping supply headquarters. Scenic Outdoors carries rifles, shotguns, handguns, semi-automatic to revolvers. We're a federally licensed gun dealer featuring the best brands: Ruger, Savage, Mossberg, Smith & Wesson, Glock, Springfield, Charter Arms, Palmetto, and Taurus. We've got a large selection of ammo at Scenic Outdoors, and gunsmith services are available too. Take Highway 136 to New Salem, then north on Scenic Highway 4 miles to Scenic Outdoors, 398-0080. Scenic Outdoors.
All right, I want to say special thanks to our guest for joining us this week. Thanks to Danny Parker from Inside Tennessee. Go check him out if you're a Tennessee fan, or maybe if you're a Tennessee hater. It's part of the Scout.com network. You can check it out there. Also, Brad Rowland, PeachtreeHoops.com. So we talked a little Hawks basketball. Don't do that very often, but I kind of like to squeeze in Brad when we can. Coming up next week, we'll talk some NFL football. Dave Schote, who is the Falcoholic, he'll join us. We'll do that next week. Chuck Keefe, head basketball coach at Marion County, will be with us as well. We'll, of course, talk some Super Bowl next week. Now, I told you I'd have one Braves note to kind of close things up. They're going to stink. They're not going to be good. I don't know why I'm starting to feel good or even begin to remotely look forward to the start of baseball season, because they're going to be terrible and they're going to ruin my summer. I'll be begging for football to be here even sooner than I normally am, because of the disappointment that I am preparing myself for the Braves to put us all through. However, first spring training game for the Braves, Tuesday, March the 1st against the Orioles. Spring training schedule is out. You can Google it. You can find it. USA Today's got it. It's all over the place. All right. Thanks to Brad Rowland. Thanks to Danny Parker for being with us. Thanks to Alex for, as always, a phenomenal job well done. Thanks to you for joining us this week as well. We invite you to join us again next week here. It's Game On KWN TV. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. So long, everybody.